You light a candle. You catch a whiff of campfire smoke on a cold night, and something in your chest relaxes before you even know why. You've probably never questioned that feeling. But the real answer is far stranger than nostalgia. It reaches back past agriculture, past cities, past Homo sapiens itself. This is the story of why humans started smoking. Not cigarettes, not the version sold in gas stations with a warning label on the side. Something older, something that might be written into your nervous system before it was ever written into history. Here's the part nobody tells you. Smoking doesn't start with tobacco or colonial trade routes or sacred rituals or careful cultivation. It might start with an accident, repeated so many times for so many thousands of years that it eventually became a choice. Let's start with fire, because before anyone could smoke anything, they needed fire. And fire has been part of your story for an almost unbelievable amount of time. The oldest confirmed evidence of controlled fire comes from a cave in South Africa, and it dates back roughly 1 million years. Burnt plant ash, charred bone. Not the leftovers of a wildfire, but a fire that was built, maintained, and used on purpose inside a cave. 1 million years ago, you weren't Homo sapiens yet. That was an earlier cousin, smaller toolkit, heavier brow, zero patience for being told what to do with a flame. And yet, they sat around fires just like you do. They cooked, they stayed warm, they huddled together in the dark, and every single one of them breathed smoke. Every day, for hundreds of thousands of years. It was unavoidable, it was constant. Nobody had a choice about it. But here's where it gets interesting. Not all of that smoke was just wood smoke. When you burn organic material, you release more than carbon dioxide and steam. You release a chemical cocktail that depends entirely on what's burning. And some plants, when they burn, release compounds that interact with the human nervous system in ways that are, let's say, noticeable. In other words, some ancestors were accidentally getting high around the campfire, and they had no idea why they suddenly felt amazing. This isn't a fringe idea. Researchers have proposed for decades that early humans living in forested regions would have been regularly exposed to smoke from psychoactive plants growing naturally across Africa, Europe, and Asia. And your brain, it turns out, is built with receptors that respond to exactly those kinds of compounds. Not because it evolved around any one plant. Those receptors are part of a much older system that regulates mood, memory, and appetite. But their presence means something remarkable. When a human first inhaled smoke from a burning psychoactive plant, their brain wasn't confused. Their brain was ready. Like it had been waiting. That moment. That first accidental hit of strange smoke around a prehistoric fire. That might be the true origin of smoking. Not a plan. Not a decision. A very pleasant accident repeated enough times that someone eventually thought to recreate it on purpose. Think about that for a second. The rituals, the medicine, the traditions, the entire modern industry built around smoke, all of it may trace back to a tired hunter who sat downwind of the wrong bush and had an unexpectedly great evening. History is sometimes beautiful in the most absurd ways. Now here's where you have to be careful, because smoking something and choosing to grow something specifically to smoke it are two very different claims. So, what does the physical evidence actually say? The oldest strong evidence of deliberate cannabis use comes from a burial site in Central Asia, dated to around 500 BC. Excavators found wooden burners containing stones that had been superheated, along with residue from cannabis plants unusually rich in the compound that gets you high. This wasn't wild hemp used for rope. This was the good stuff, placed directly into a ritual burial, 2,500 years ago. But does the absence of older evidence mean it didn't happen earlier? Or does it just mean nobody has found it yet? Because organic material barely survives. Seeds, leaves, fiber, almost none of it lasts thousands of years in the ground. Stone tools survive for millions of years because stone is nearly indestructible. A wooden pipe filled with dried herbs is gone within a few centuries. Absence of evidence in this case is absolutely not evidence of absence. There's also what you could call the storyteller problem. A Greek historian writing in the 5th century BC described nomadic people on the Eurasian steppe, setting up small tents, heating stones until they glowed, and throwing hemp seeds onto them, then sitting inside, inhaling the smoke, howling with pleasure, in his own words. For centuries, people assumed he was exaggerating. Then, archaeologists dug up burial mounds from that same culture and found exactly what he described. Bronze burners, heated stones, hemp residue. He wasn't embellishing anything. If anything, he was underselling it. Let's talk about tobacco, since it's the one most people actually think of. Tobacco is native to the Americas, unknown anywhere else on Earth until European contact in the late 15th century. Explorers reaching the Caribbean were baffled by locals walking around with small glowing sticks, inhaling smoke and releasing it through their nose and mouth. Within weeks, the sailors were trying it themselves. Of course they were, but tobacco use in the Americas is far older than that first encounter. Chemical residue in ancient pipes has been traced back at least 3,500 years, and some researchers believe the true origin could stretch back 10,000 years or more. And here's what matters. In ancient America, tobacco wasn't recreational. It was sacred. It was used in healing, in communication with the spirit world, in binding agreements between groups. Blowing smoke on someone was a blessing, not a habit. A shaman using tobacco wasn't taking a break. He was opening a channel. The casual, everyday cigarette you picture is an almost entirely European invention, and a fairly recent one. Now go back even further, because there's a piece of this story most people have genuinely never heard. In 2019, archaeologists working in the Great Salt Lake Desert in Utah uncovered a hearth roughly 12,000 years old, containing the seeds of a wild tobacco species native to North America. These weren't seeds that had simply blown into a fire by accident. They were concentrated, deliberate. The site predates any known pipe or pottery in the region by thousands of years, which raises an obvious question. If people were putting tobacco into fires 12,000 years ago, what were people everywhere else doing with their own local plants at the same time? Because 12,000 years ago, humans were already in Africa, in Asia, in Europe, in Australia. And the drive to alter consciousness isn't an American phenomenon, it's a human one. Here's an idea that sounds wild but is taken seriously by respected researchers: the intoxication hypothesis. The basic argument goes like this. Across nearly every human culture ever documented, people have sought out ways to alter how their mind feels. Fermented drinks, mushrooms, smoke, chewed leaves. This behavior is so universal, so persistent, and so independently repeated across unrelated cultures that some scientists think it isn't accidental at all. Ronald Siegel, a psychopharmacologist at UCLA, proposed decades ago that the pursuit of intoxication functions as a fourth drive, sitting right alongside hunger, thirst, and sex, and that it's biologically embedded across the animal kingdom, not just in humans. Elephants seek out fermented fruit on purpose. Reindeer in Siberia eat a certain psychoactive mushroom, then drink the urine of other reindeer who already ate it, since the compound passes through intact. That's reindeer doing drug recycling. Honestly, respect. If that drive runs this deep and this old, it's entirely reasonable that early humans, long before farming, long before pottery or pipes, were deliberately exposing themselves to smoke from certain plants because they had already learned it changed something in their mind. Maybe they picked campsites near those exact plants. Maybe they learned, through trial and error with real consequences, which smoke felt wonderful and which could kill you. That knowledge never got written down. It got lived, passed mouth to ear around a fire in the dark. There's another side of this story that rarely comes up: smoking as medicine. Long before it was recreational, long before it was spiritual, it may have been medical. One of the oldest known medical documents in the world, from ancient Egypt around 1550 BC, describes treatments involving inhaling smoke from heated herbs, specifically for problems with the throat and lungs. Strange to hear until you remember that smoke reaches the lungs directly. So if a plant has real medicinal properties, delivering it through smoke makes a certain kind of sense. Hippocrates, the same man doctors still take an oath named after, wrote about inhaling herbal vapors to treat lung disease. Ancient Ayurvedic medicine in India describes a practice literally translated as smoke drinking, with detailed protocols refined over centuries. This pattern shows up in ancient China, ancient Mesopotamia, ancient Greece, ancient India. Almost everywhere humans left written records. Not because people were addicted, because it worked, or at least worked often enough to keep doing it. There's also a piece of this that has nothing to do with chemistry and everything to do with connection. Humans are deeply social animals. For most of your evolutionary history, isolated individuals died and groups survived. Anything that strengthened trust between people had real survival value. Shared rituals, including shared altered experiences, are extraordinarily effective at building that trust. Modern neuroscience backs this up. Shared ritual synchronizes group behavior and deepens a sense of belonging in ways that are hard to replicate any other way. So, when a group sat together breathing smoke from burning herbs and entered an altered state together, that wasn't just recreation. That was social infrastructure. It was how you built the kind of trust that let a group walk into danger together and come home alive. Which brings you to the uncomfortable part. The shift from sacred smoke to casual habit is, historically, a disaster. Tobacco reached Europe in the 16th century and spread with a speed that should sound familiar. By the 1900s, the manufactured cigarette had turned something once ritualized and communal into a mass product engineered to be addictive, and the industry spent decades hiding what its own scientists already knew. A shaman in 500 BC placing cannabis on hot stones during a burial, an executive in 1960 signing off on marketing cigarettes to teenagers. Both involve smoke. Almost nothing else is the same. So when did it actually start? The honest answer is you don't know exactly, and you probably never will. The physical evidence takes you back 12,000 years with real confidence, and possibly much further with reasonable speculation. But the behavioral drive underneath it, the desire to alter your mind, to bond through shared ritual, to use smoke as medicine, is almost certainly older than any artifact ever found. It may be as old as fire itself. It may be as old as the exact cognitive leap that made you human in the first place. The ability to look at a burning plant and think, last time that happened, I felt different, let me do that again. That's not addiction. That's intelligence. What is absolutely clear is that by the time written history begins, in every corner of the world where people lived, they were already finding ways to put smoke into their bodies. The plants changed. The rituals changed. The reasons changed. The behavior did not. It was already ancient by the time anyone thought to write it down. There's something almost poetic in that. For everything separating you from your ancestors, the screens, the medicine, the sheer volume of information you scroll through daily, a few threads run unbroken through 100,000 years of human experience. Fire, smoke, breath. The oldest humans sat around flames and breathed the same smoky air you'd smell at a bonfire tonight. At some point, some of them started paying attention to what that smoke was doing to them, and then they started choosing it on purpose, and they passed that choice down, generation after generation, all the way to nomads howling with pleasure in their tents, to physicians prescribing smoke for a cough, to strangers on a beach watching outsiders cough and splutter through their very first cigarette. So the next time you light a candle, or sit around a summer fire, or catch a stray thread of wood smoke on a cold night, you're taking part in something far older than you realize. You're doing exactly what humans have always done. You're breathing.